All right, continuing on with Flash. Last video was kind of the base, finishing that up. So I'm going to show you how I do skin tones. Skin tones are challenging for me. For me, it's the hardest part of any build because, in my opinion, they're the hardest damn thing to paint. You know, I get a lot of people sending me reference photos of, hey, can you do my skin tones like this? Can you make it look like this? Can you make it look like this painter or that painter? And every time I get a question like that, it's like, you need to send it to that painter. I will say that every single time. If I get a job, can you make it look like this painter? The best way to make it look like that painter is send it to that painter. We are all different. We all have different styles. We all do things differently. I've said it before, if you give a painter two or three painters the exact same subject, you gave them all the same tools and all the same colors and everything, they would come out with completely different results. Even if you gave them all the same techniques and all the same steps, it would still look different. We're all different, you know, we all have our fingerprints and we just do things the way we do them. So I've already primed these once with, this is just, if I remember correctly, this is the Stynylrez Neutral Flesh. So it's on a little bit of a, it's not my favorite like base coat for flesh, but it's gonna give us a starting point. So recently I've gone the way of many other painters and I've been using these just hobby craft paints from, these are folk art. They're just they're acrylics, they're water-based paints. And I've been kind of using these as a base coat, and I'm gonna mix up kind of my own little starting point for flesh. So what I've been doing recently for skin tones, and it seems to work better for me, is I get a base color, I do all my shading with pastels, and it looks really funky, and then I go in and kind of blend it in with different shades on top of that. So lots of layers. So I'm gonna mix up some of this kind of pinkish flesh in here. It's pretty pink. This is a little brighter. It's got a little more white in it. And these are cheap. These are like literally, these paints are like, I'm just gonna get a dirty brush. These paints are literally like 99 cents a bottle. So what I'm gonna do is I don't want to cover up what I have because oops, I spilled some on his face. I may have to go back and reprime that now because it's going to show up. All right. So anyway, I got schmutz on his face. So I'm going to add some water to this so I can spray it through my airbrush. Just mix it up till. And this is pretty pink, peachy, which is fine because let's mix some more in there. I'm going to have to probably reprime these since I kind of spilt some of this on that face. So I'll probably go do that real quick off camera. Add a little more of that darker tone, peachy tone. A little more water. And you literally just mix these up with water. I mean, nothing fancy. So we're going to go get the Stynylrez real quick. Give me 1 second. Okay, now that I think of it, this is probably not the Stynylrez. I think this is a Vallejo color that I used. I'm not sure what it is. I'm gonna go ahead and put down a layer of this. It's just Stynylrez Light Flesh. Hopefully I have an airbrush over here that's clean enough to spray. I've been really bad lately about cleaning my airbrushes. So they're a mess. What I do is I've got like 8 or 9 airbrushes, so what I do is because when I'm in the middle of working, I'm really lazy. I don't do a very good job of cleaning my airbrushes. And I just spend like a night going through and cleaning them all. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bright. This is actually gonna be very similar to what I mixed up. So I'm gonna throw a layer of primer of this light flesh on. And the Stynylrez is a little thick. You have to kind of turn your air pressure up quite a bit. For anyone who's going to ask, the airbrush I'm using right now is the Iwata HPCS. I don't know the needle size, I never do. I'm not the kind of guy that goes in and super tight with an airbrush. my skills aren't that great with an airbrush, so like I'm never using like a 0.3. 0.5 is usually the smallest I've used. I do have an airbrush with a 0.3 in it. But this Finalizing is a great primer. Put that to the side. Do the hands. We're going to prime these. We're going to let them sit for about 10-15 minutes to dry. And then we can, I'll probably mix up a slightly darker tone than what I have. I'll probably add a little brown to that mixture to the side there. Now that I've had to redo this in a lighter tone. The tone I had, this tone here, I think is too orange as a starting point. So that's why I was going to add a little pink to it with that color just mixed up. I have a towel down here because I don't, when I paint at my desk, I don't have a little spray booth, like a way to pull out overspray and stuff, so I usually just spray onto a towel. I've got a bunch of shitty towels that I kind of use for that kind of purpose. You can see I put it on kind of wet. Got the air pressure cranked up pretty good to get it to go through the airbrush. Your little piece of blue tack to the side here, sticking these in to dry. I was supposed to do this last night, but one of the projects I'm working on, licensed pieces, I had some pretty significant changes I had to do, which took me all last night and part of the day to do. Hopefully they'll look at it and they'll call that project done, because it's a very slow process. Oh shit, it fell off. It fell off my skewer, dang it. Hold on. Oh please. Got a crap load of these sticks with alligator clips. So this is back from my Gundam days, and I know a lot of you guys do it anyway, but I just bought skewers on eBay in bulk. I think I probably bought like 2,000 at one time. And I'll say at one time I had 1,000 of them, or at least 800 with alligator clips on them, because some of the Gundam kits I worked on had 600 plus pieces, and they would all get a stick with an alligator clip. A lot of those have been repurposed now for doing figures, so they don't have alligator clip on them or stuff. So I've got a shitload of those left over from when I used to do, mechs. If you hear it sputtering a little bit, it's probably because one thing about the Finalizing, I love Finalizing. It's my favorite primer, but it can get chunky. So you gotta shake the crack, you gotta shake it up really, really good, and even then you still get little chunks. I asked Ken Badger what to do about that. He said shake it more. Touche. I know some guys that strain it. They'll strain it through, pantyhose or something like that, or stocking. So yeah, so every time I get people who send me reference of other painters, if they want to look like that painter, I tell them send it to that painter. I kind of told, what was I doing? I forgot what I was doing. I was doing something for someone, and they kept sending pictures to me of Soul's work, and Soul does amazing skin tones. Like, look, I'm never going to get there. You need to send it to him if you want it to look like that. So I've even suggested sometimes to people, if you want Soul skin tones, send him all the stuff that's got skin on it, and send me everything else. But then, it's an extra expense, you get more shipping and stuff. But anyway, I do it the way I do it. I'm getting better. The last few pieces I've done, I've been real happy with the results. Okay, So those have been coated. We're gonna pause, let those dry for about, I don't know, 10 minutes, and we'll come back and we'll do another, we'll add this kind of custom mix I have coming up. Alrighty, so let that dry for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. It's not completely dry yet, but it's okay. So this is kind of what I came up with for my base tone. It's kind of nice peachy, fleshy look to it. And so what I did is I had that initial mix of this, this is, I don't know what this color is. It's pink. I'm sure it's called something. What is this? It's called Warm Bisque with a little bit of Cool Bisque. And I added just a hair of this brown, which turned it a little bit on the gray side, warmed it up, and then I added just a touch of red, and then kind of brought it to this. So this is, I think, a good starting point. Again, I'm not too worried about this color in particular, because by the time I'm done with it, this is just the very bottom color of everything we're doing. I've got a load of my airbrush. I've got it mixed about the same consistency as the Stynylrez. It's not super watery. So I got the airbrush turned up again. I'm gonna start layering this on. And now this is a true water paint, so you got to put it on light, otherwise it'll just pool. I need to really clean my airbrushes. So I'm backed off. I'm just gonna put this on lightly. I may have to add a little more water to it. It's not quite coming through. Maybe a little too thick. Let me do that real quick. One thing I found with these cheap craft paints, it's a fine line between being just right and too thin. And it could just be my airbrush is completely dirty right now. Yeah, I need some serious airbrush maintenance. Alright, so add a little more water. Let's see if it comes out better. There we go. Right. I'm not sure this is showing up in camera. Got like all my freaking lights pointed on it. Basically, I'm just using this to shift that color of the Stynylrez. So it's gonna be kind of pink right now, but it's okay. We're gonna, again, this is just the base. The very bottom layer of many. Come on. My airbrush is clogging up. Not sure if we're getting dry tip. Let's see. Maybe getting dry tip. Okay, so I think you get the idea. I'm gonna go ahead and do this to all the parts, and then we'll come back. Okay, so I let those dry. I just spent some time cleaning my airbrush real quick because it's really bad. I went back and I sealed all these pieces with some Krylon flat. Hold on, let me get the can for you. So I used to be able to get Krylon matte spray by me, but I can't seem to find it anymore, so I found this Krylon Max flat spray. Now the trick with this stuff is it can go on flat, it can go on matte, or it can go on semi-gloss depending on how you spray it. So I shake the ever-living shit out of it. If I put it on wet, like if I spray it on really wet, it'll dry to a semi-gloss, kind of a matte to semi-gloss finish. If I put it on kind of mid, medium, it dries to a matte. If I stand way back and I mist it on, it dries flat. So if you put it on wet, it's going to dry to like a semi-gloss. If you just kind of fan it on, it'll dry matte. So I try to get it on so it dries matte or flat, because the next step I need it flat or matte for my pastels to stick. If you've ever done pastels, they don't stick to a glossy or semi-gloss surface, they'll just slide right off. So thank you to Anya Chatania, I think that's how you say her name, at Wonderfest. She did a little tutorial using pastels on skin tones, and I've always used pastels of some sort, but she introduced me to the pan pastels, which are artist pastels. These are super nice. They're really highly pigmented. They stick very well. The great thing about them is that after you put them on and you seal them again, you don't lose the effect. I do have a set of cheap hobby pastels. These guys right here. Now these are like, those are $30 at Hobby Lobby. I use a coupon. You get them for like 20, 30 bucks or whatever. $20 at the coupon. They're great because it's got a huge rainbow of colors. But the problem is that once you put them on, you seal them, you kind of lose some of the effects. And typically have to do them 2 or 3 times. These I find do it once and we're good to go. So I also have a separate set of brushes only for skin tone pastels, because I don't want to use my other brushes over here. These are my other pastel brushes. These are really dirty. These have all sorts of different weathering colors and stuff on those, and I don't want to get those on my skin tone. So I have a separate set of brushes for pastels, and these are these are just cheap brushes, nothing fancy. But I got little brushes, big brushes, it runs the gamut. So what I typically do is I'll have like one big brush, and I try to clean it off from the previous time. You can actually see here, I'm not sure if you can see, but if I clean it off, I get little pastels. I try to have one big brush as I can use for blending. So I'm trying to get as much off from previous. I don't know if you see on the towel, but some's coming off. And that's just a little angle brush. And then I use little tiny brushes to kind of get into details and stuff. So I've got a huge selection of brushes here. Again, these are just cheap brushes and don't buy anything fancy. And right now I only use basically these colors for skin tones. This is red iron oxide. This is burnt sienna. This is burnt sienna tint. This is raw umber. And sometimes I use a little Payne's gray for if I want to do like a little shadowing, 5 o'clock shadow, or a little bit under the eyes. So they're really bright, but don't worry, because when I get done with this stuff, he's going to look really funky. And I also use sometimes, let me see, I do have another lighter color that I'll use sometimes for the very bright. This is a raw umber tint. It's almost white, but it's got just a little bit of this brownish gray in it. I tend to kind of use this the most, the burnt sienna. It's a nice starting point, and it's actually really pretty simple. So I got a little brush here. I'm going to take some of this on my brush, and I'm going to start in the deepest recesses, like underneath these creases in the neck, and basically just going to paint them in. Now it's important here, and what I'll do is I'll blow it off. I'll blow the excess off like that. Make sure your lips are dry when you do that. You don't want to have wet lips and then blow it off. Blow wet spit on your subject, because then you'll have wet speckles. And if you want it to stick better, you can dab it, kind of push it onto the surface, because sometimes the painting motion, like you're painting, it won't stick all the way. I'm going in here. So this is not covering up the base color. You're still gonna be able to see it through it. And then there's a big crease back here. So this is where I take the big brush like this and I'll go in and soften the effect. I just dab it, and this is gonna blend it in a little bit. So there you see you've got a nice soft shadow, nice soft shading. And I'm constantly turning the piece in the light so I can see where all the details are in the sculpt, because sometimes it's hard to see if you just look at it one way. And it's also hard to see, now here in the crease I'll just dab also to kind of soften them. It's also hard to see all the details if you have light coming from every direction like I do right now. And I have that for video. So sometimes I'll just turn on like a top light, and then that really harsh light will show shadows of some of the details you normally won't see. So I usually put some on and blow the excess off and then soften with the big brush. And I like this little chisel brush because the way I use it, I'll put the tip of the chisel into the shadow, and the way this is angled, it's softening the edge towards the highlight. So just the shape of the brush kind of helps with the shape of the shading, if that makes sense. And I can bring some of that excess down with the tip and helps fade it in like that. There's a big shape right here, so I'm kind of going to do it softer. And I angle this up to blend it up. Not sure if you can see, but there's a little bit of a highlight right there, so I'm not going to go on top of that too much. So I add it and then I kind of blend. Add, then blend, add, then blend. So after this step, it's going to look really contrasty. It's going to look kind of weird. That's okay, because we're going to blend it all in as we go. Behind the ear. Again, I'm using the chisel, the shape of this big brush, to help soften that out and bring it out some. So where the deeper shadow, I put a lot of the pigment. Where it kind of, it's rounder, a little softer, I don't put so much. Start defining his jawline here a little bit. I find this much easier than trying to do this with an airbrush personally, so this is what I do. Don't want to really get on his Adam's apple, because that's going to be a high spot, so we're going to leave that. And so since I've got some of this color in my brush, I can come down, I can do this motion here. It'll be real subtle, but it'll bring that shadow down into this area just a little bit. So I'm just using whatever excess I have on the brush to kind of add a little shape. I'm trying to avoid the Adam's apple. I think you can see that in camera, looking pretty nice. So here's the difference between the two. One on the left hasn't had anything done, the one on the right has. So what I'll do is I'll show a good portion of this step on camera, because this does take a while. And I'll come back and show you what it looks like after this step. Actually, like for this step right here that I'm doing right now, I actually like a stiffer brush, because I can really pinpoint where I put the pastel and I have a little more control over it. See, it's a little chisel brush here. Does a good job. I can get in there and really get it to stick. Don't forget the little divot in his chin. I'm gonna do a little, I forgot what this is called. I forgot this little spot above the noses, or and the lips. It's called something, but I can't think of it right now. I come and draw around the nose, right in that crevice, using this chisel part, the brush. And I come back with the soft brush, the big one. Again, just kind of soften it and bring it out. If you do kind of mess up and you get somewhere you don't want it, you can just take a damp Q-tip and try to wipe it off, but it's tough. This stuff sticks very, very well. But we're going to do a couple more, at least one more step with the pastels, where we can kind of see how drastic that shadow looks. We're going to soften it up a little bit. Just like that. Sometimes I'll dab it on my hand to get any excess off. I'm going to bring this down a little bit more here. Up underneath the nose. Staying away from the bridge of the mouth so that can stay bright. Starting to get some shape to them. We'll go ahead and hit these little spots in the mouth. The lips will get painted separately. They'll get tinted, but we're gonna go ahead and add some shadow to them already. And it kind of gets in the recesses, the wrinkles of the lips, and starts to show up those details. Okay, so over here on this side of the cheek, I need to kind of turn it. So if I look at it this way, the light's shining right onto it, so I lose any shape there. If I tilt it, you can see there, I can see a shadow, so I know there's some, I need to put something there. Just going to define his cheekbone. Same thing over here. If I hold it like this, the light's flat, I can't see it. If I tilt it just a little bit, then I see it. Now, I am seeing, I'm just now noticing this in this piece, I am seeing some grow lines in the print. They're subtle, but they're there. Hopefully that by the time this is all done, you won't see them. not much I can do about it because it's got all the skin texture and everything in them. So now you see here what I'm doing is I'm dabbing right here, and it's softening the shadow going up into the eye socket. Do the same thing over here. Just taking whatever little excess I have on the big brush, and it's kind of getting a little bit of shadow up the side there. I can do just a little bit more. I can actually put a little tad on the brush and do that. So now we're getting some shape. And then we're going to go into the eye socket here. I'll probably go back underneath the eyes with some burnt umber. And Payne's Gray just a little bit to add a little. John already gave me a really good tip to add just a hint of bluish purple in the shadows of the eyes. And I do that now, and it does make a huge difference. It's very, very subtle. You probably don't see it in my photos, but in person it looks really, really nice. Okay, just like that. And we got some wrinkles here in the bridge of the nose, so we're gonna go there and try to get just pastels just in the wrinkles. Like that. And I'm gonna put a nice little dot right there, nice shadow. I'm going to come to the side of the nose here a little bit. There's a little shape right here. Just like that. It's amazing what a little bit can do. Okay. So we got some wrinkles right here in the brow, there, and right there. So I'll do this face all the way, and then I'll go back and do the other one because I like to get this one done. I get to get one done, and then it's my reference for the other one. There's a little shape right here I missed. That sounded me blowing off the excess every time. I didn't get behind the ear last time, so let's do that before I forget. So these steps right here are pretty much the same I do for every portrait, and then the following steps after this is kind of where I just kind of play around until I get the look I want. I'm also going to go hit around the hairline. Just a little bit. There's a temple, hit around the temple pretty good. We're coming up in like 30 minutes. This is gonna be a long video, guys. The hairline up here. Just a little bit. Now here in the part, I'll hit a little bit heavier, get a little more shadow there. And then I just use this big brush and I actually push up into the hair to soften it. So depending on how you blend it with the big brush, it has a big effect on what look you're gonna get. Let's see, I'm tilting this around to see other shapes. There's a couple little wrinkles right here. Let's see if I can get some in there. They're pretty small. I actually do a little bit of dry brushing with the highlight color with the pastels. It's kind of weird. You typically probably wouldn't hear that, but it does work. Okay, now we're getting inside the ears. I hit those pretty damn hard. Oh, also don't forget the nostrils. And then little wrinkles of the ear. And this is just about done with this color on this guy, on this portrait. I should mention that you kind of want to avoid touching the surface with your hands or anything really after you have pigments on there, because you'll see fingerprints and you could rub it off. The pigments that is. I'm gonna come over here. I'm just gonna take a little of this excess on this brush and it's gonna be real subtle, but it's gonna just help shape the shoulders a little bit. So this looks pretty good. Happy with this. And then I tilt it around, make sure I didn't miss anything. The only thing I'm really missing are these wrinkles right here. They're really tight. See if I can get some in there. Yeah, if I just put it in there and then blow it off instead of try to blend it with the big brush, it seems to work better. I really just want to get the pigment into the wrinkle. And we got a little bit here. And let's see, probably a little bit over here too. All right, so let's look at the difference. One on the left doesn't have any pastels and one on the right does. You can see different shapes and stuff going on, and it really brings up the details in the sculpt. So I'm going to go seal this, and when I seal it's going to spray it on really dry so it dries to a flatter matte. That way I can take the next round of pigments. Actually, I'm not going to seal yet. I'm not going to seal it in case I lose any of the work I've done. Not that I lose it, but that it gets muted a little bit. I'm going to seal it after I do the other portrait, and then the hands. The hands get done the same way. Excuse me. I'm not going to show it on camera. It's the same way. Go and just get the shadows and stuff with the same pigments and everything. So That's how that is looking right now. Pretty good so far. All right, so I got the other one done. Notice that these sculpts are a little bit different. This one on the left is a little bit older, and the one on the right is a little bit younger. But we're going to treat them the same way because this has got a little more texture in the skin, a little more wrinkles, and even though we're doing the same skin tones, he will look older just because of the sculpt. So I'm going to go seal these real quick. These are looking really good. Pretty happy with how they're looking right now. So while the sealer dries on the heads, we're going to do the same thing on the hands. I'm going to do the whole thing, but the same concept, just going with this burnt sienna and hit all the shadows, all the shapes. The veins are something I do typically towards the end. Again, I use pastels, and I typically just do them on top, super light in a bluish green tint. And a lot of people, when I take photos, work in progress photos, like, I can't see the veins. Like, yeah, because they're there. And I fight people this all the time. They're there, but they're very subtle. They're underneath the skin, so they may not show up in the photos. When you see it in person, they're there. So I'm constantly telling people, like, I don't see the veins, they're not there. It's like, they're there. If I do it to the point where you can see it, like in my cell phone picture or something like that, it's gonna look stupid. It's gonna look like little green and blue highways on the arms. It's not gonna look natural. So sometimes I have to fight with clients, and again, I say sometimes, just tell me, you just trust me, it's there. And sometimes I just refuse to do something. They're like, hey, you do this more, do this more. It's like, no, nope. And I just flat out say no, because I think it will look stupid. So sometimes I just do that. You know, it's like, look, I know what you want to see. It's there. When you get it, when you get it and you see it in person, trust me, it'll be there. So let's do one hand on camera. It's the same thing. Basically, bring out the shapes of the knuckles. And sometimes I kind of fake a shape. Like the knuckles, sometimes they're sculpted really soft, so I'll just kind of fake it to give it some definition. Like right there, they're really not sculpted, but I just add a little shadow and it gives the illusion of a knuckle being there. Hands go pretty quick. As far as this step goes. So it's looking pretty good. Try to make sure I add a shadow around every spot where a finger meets. There would be a little shadow there. So left, nothing. The right's got the pastel work. So we'll do those and seal those. All right, fast forward to the next day, because when your son asks you if you want to have a movie night and pizza night, you stop what you're doing and you have a movie night and a pizza night. So that's what I did. So here we go. So last time we left off, I was doing the burnt sienna. Here are the hands. And these actually look pretty damn good right where they are. I mean, and I'm almost kind of inclined to leave these where they are. I really like them. But we're going to do a little bit more. We're going to add a little bit of highlighting to it, to these and the faces. So we're going to put those to the side for now. So now what I like to do is, I think I'm going to go in. I'm probably going to stay away from the red oxide. I don't want to get too much red. I think I may go in here with a little bit of this raw umber in some of the really deep recesses. Let's see what this looks like. So these have been sealed in that Krylon matte, flat. I'm just going to take a little bit. And we're just going to kind of go over some of the deep areas, like in here, in the eyes. I'm just using the same brush I had before. I don't mind if it has a little bit of other color on it. So I'll blend it in. And we're just going to do this real light in the really deep recesses. And it's just adding another little slight tone to it. And we're going to hit the lips a little bit. And let's see where else. I may not do a whole lot of this. This is very subtle. More than anything, I want to kind of hit up underneath the eyes. This is not covering up her previous work, it's just kind of accentuating it. I think that's all I'm going to do. I don't want to do a lot. Again, we're just going to hit down a little bit. A little bit. And we go back and tap in with the soft brush to blend it in, soften it. And we're going to hit the lips again. These lips will get a wash at in the very end, or towards the end. But this will kind of establish a shadow. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, that's what I'm going to do on there. Again, I'm real, this has got a little bit of green in it, and I don't like adding too much green. Excuse me. Excuse me again. So now we're going to go in, and this is the burnt sienna tint. So this is basically a highlight color. And unfortunately, this one has dropped and has cracked. It's not the end of the world. It just means you gotta be careful because it'll get everywhere. So again, I'm just gonna go with the same brush. Sorry about the noise in the background. My son is yelling at his friends on Fortnite. And we're gonna hit the hot spot, the high spots, like the tip of the nose, cheeks. Same over here. Here. And I'm not blending it in yet because I'm going to blend this all in at the same time. So it's going to look a little contrasty. Top of the head. trying to avoid getting this into the shadow areas. Okay, so we got a couple of specks there that fell on. Hit the top of the shoulders. This brush is a little small for the top of the shoulders, but it's okay. Hit this little spot here on the neck. It's a little messy right now. That's all right. We're gonna come back and smooth it off. So I remember how I said earlier, I kind of do a dry brush technique with these, which is basically you take just a little bit of material and I'm gonna just use the flat side of the brush. I'm not gonna use the tip. I'm just gonna brush it over the tips, the edges of the ears, and it's just only gonna hit the high spots. See? So it's just hitting that the outline, and it's hitting any spot that's high, leaving the shadows. Just do it real light. So I'm just getting pastels here and around the edge. It's not getting it in that shadow area. Do the same thing on this ear, and you gotta take most of it off, otherwise it'll get down into where you don't want it to go. Okay, just like that. And I think I'm pretty good here so far. We're gonna hit up here and right here. So we're getting these really bright highlights. And we're gonna hit the side of the nose here a little bit. See, I'm just using the tip of the chisel just to get it right where I want. Let's do the top of the lip a little bit. Just hitting the high spots. Okay, that's pretty good. So now I'm going to take this big brush that I had earlier. I'm going to try to get as much as these other pastels off. Just clean it off really good. So I don't want to darken these highlights I just put on. So I'm just going to take this soft brush and just going to go hit on these, and I'm just going to tap. Tap, 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 tap. You see that? And it just softens it in. Boom, 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 boom. Just like that. Now if you notice here, I had a speck of pastel that landed right here. And it's not one to soften. So I'm going to take a very damp Q-tip and just wipe it off. Just like that. Same thing here on the cheek. We're just going to come and we're just going to tap. I'm just going to soften that. Very lightly. This is my preferred way of doing this. I feel like I said, There's some guys that can go in there and draw with the airbrush. I'm not one of those guys. I feel like I have a lot more control doing it this way. Let's do one on camera. I'll do the hands in the other head the same way. Now in these big areas, I'm kind of brushing a little bit, spread it out a little bit more. Come back in here. I'm going to hit this a little bit. A lot of tapping motions. So I blow off the excess before I go in and start blending. Because with this, if I don't, then I'll just get pastels where I don't want. So when I'm doing this, what this is doing is it is actually solidifying where the pastel is, where I want to stick, and then since the pressure along the surface of the brush is different, the pressure lessens towards the outside bristles. That's why it softens. So all the pressure is in the center of the brush, but these outside bristles don't have much pressure, so it's just blending it in. You get a really nice soft transition. So that's how we're looking. And there's a little contrasty right now, but we're going to go back in the very end with some transparent skin tones in the airbrush and just very lightly blend this all in. So I'm just seeing some of the little spots where I can bring out some of the details. Now I do have this color right here, which is raw umber tint. So this is like kind of it's like this, but with a lot of white in it. Let's see if I can maybe put some of that on the tip of the nose. It's almost white. There. And maybe on the cheeks a little bit, just ever so slightly. And then blend it in. It's subtle, but it's there. I'm just doing this on the very, very, very high spots. I like the chisel brush because the way the bristles are shaped, it's very good for blending. And then if you accidentally, get a highlight color in one of your shadows, you can just go back and kind of re-hit the shadows a little bit. But that's where we are there. Hopefully that was on camera mostly, but see, it's a little punchy right now, but that's what I want. I start real contrasty, and then I go back and I go in with some, with the airbrush, and I'll do that on the next step after I seal this again. I'm gonna do some, just on the top of the ears here, of this. and then we seal it, and then we'll go back in with some semi-transparent skin tone. So we'll do the other head like this and the hands, and we'll come back after it's been sealed. All right, now comes the part where I just kind of wing it. Well, I wing it all the time, but this is the part where I really wing it. So for this part, I'm going to use GarageKits.us paints. These are kind of my go-to skin tones. I've got a bunch of other paints, but to be honest, out of all the colors I have from there, I use the skin tones the most. I've got probably 90 colors, and I use maybe a third of them. Just simply because I have other paints that I like better for other purposes. I get asked all the time, what paints do you use? And like most modelers, I use just about everything that's out there. I use Mr. Color. That's like, I have a shitload of Mr. Color. I use Vallejo, GarageKits.us. I've got some Badgers. I got the craft paints. About the only paint I don't use is Tamiya. I don't know. I just never. I know a lot of guys that all they use are Tamiya. That's just me. So what we're gonna do is these are kind of my two main colors, Light African Flesh and Garage Kit Flesh. And what I do with these is I put it on real light. I don't want to cover up my previous work. So I've got my air pressure turned down. I don't know. It's like, what's my air pressure? I don't even know. It's about 10. I never look at my air pressure gauge. People always ask me, what's your air pressure? What do you do? It's like, I turn it to when it gets the effect I want. So I don't ever look at the numbers. That's just how I roll. So I'm going to shake this up. I'm going to start off with the medium, or the Light African Flesh. And I like this color because, and I learned this, I used to be stuck on the name of colors. I used to be, oh, I need this, it says flesh, it's got to be flesh. Well, in this case, it actually works really well. I like this because it's actually a really good kind of Caucasian flesh, even though it says Light African Flesh. It's a nice, so I've got it here. I'm actually kind of yellow personally, my skin tones, but if I put it on and I let it dry, it's pretty close to my skin tone. So it's a little warm. I don't want to warm this up too much, so I'm going to put some of this in my airbrush, and I'm going to thin it. This bottle is clogged, and I've got a slight air leak in my thing here, so you're gonna hear some hissing. That's where it's coming from. I love Jesse's paints. I'm not a fan of Jesse's bottles. That's just my personal thing. I need to get a toothpick and unclog this. I know there's paint in here. Yeah, keeps clogging, sorry. Or something keeping the paint from flowing out of the bottle. I'm not sure what it is. And I'm gonna thin it. I'm not counting drops, I'm just, because this is an opaque color, and I don't want to opaque. So I'm just going to thin it a little bit with Jesse's thinner. If I had to guess, it's probably, 1/3 paint to, or 2/3 paint to 1/3 thinner. Let me mix my airbrush. I need to send my airbrushes in for some serious maintenance. I just cleaned this airbrush, so hopefully it wants to work. It doesn't seem like it wants to work, of course. They need a really good deep cleaning. When I spend the night cleaning my airbrushes, it'll take me 3-4 hours to clean them all. Yeah, I can see that I'm going to pause for a second, see if I can get this work better. I already switched airbrushes to a Badger Chrome. I really got to spend some time cleaning airbrushes. All right, so I got that paint mixed up in here. Now I'm backed off quite a ways here. Probably, I don't know, I'm off, my airbrush is off camera. Probably a good 1.5 feet away. And I'm just gonna mist this on. Come on. It was just working, this piece of shit. God damn it. Ugh. So frustrating. It was just working. And it's a good idea to have a Q-tip by, in case you get like a big splot. One thing I don't like about the batters is the needle guard. They tend to build up paint and then you get a big splatter of paint. Anyway, I'm backed off. I'm just gonna mist this on. So I just got one underneath the eye there. I'm gonna go and take that off. So I'm backed off quite a ways here. And we're just gonna blend this all together. I don't wanna lose my shading. So that's why I'm backed off so far. And we're just gonna shift the color a little bit. That's about it. So on the left, we added some, on the right, it hasn't been blended. And you can see the difference. Still seeing all my shading and stuff, it's just subtle. I'm gonna do the same thing to this guy. And if you accidentally go a little overboard this, you can just kind of go back in with your pastels if you want and re-establish some of the shadows. Mix up a little more paint. And when you back off this far, you'll get a little bit of that speckling effect, which will kind of give it a sense of skin texture and skin pores. Yeah, I need to spend some time cleaning airbrushes today, big time. And you can see I'm just doing kind of light passes because I don't want to lose the work I did. So I want to kind of tie it all together. And that's about it. Let's take a look. So hopefully you can still see the shading is still there. We just kind of tied it all together. Now I am going to brighten this up just a little bit. Again, we're not going to go crazy. We're going to use some Garage Kit Flesh. This has got a little bit of pink in it. I don't want to do a lot, just very few passes of this. I tend to waste a lot of paint. I always mix up more than I need. So now I'm going to back up even further, and we're going to do a few passes. And I got some big specks that I don't want. I take my Q-tip and just kind of blend them in. I may have backed off too far. If you back off too far, then you get a lot of specks, and I don't want a lot. I just want some little ones. And that's all I'm going to do, really. That's about it with that color. Basically like 3 light passes. I'm not sure if you can tell the difference, but it brightened it up just a hair. knock the warmth down just a little bit. Add just a little bit of pink, and this is actually right where I want it. So, to me, this is where I'm going to leave the skin tones, I think. I'm really happy with this. Now, I'm probably going to, more than likely, I'll send pictures to Leo, and he'll like, where's the shading? I don't see the shading. It's there. So, in person, I'm looking at it right now. It looks super natural. Real nice subtle transitions. A nice fleshy look to it. It's not too tan. It's not too red. So I'm going to go seal these. Let's look at the hands. I'm going to go get the hands real quick. Actually, they're right here. The hands, I think we're going to leave right where they are, just with the pastels. Super happy with those. The hands actually look really similar to the faces without doing the airbrush work. So I may have, for whatever reason, the base coat may have been slightly different. So doing it this way, I find that I spend less time doing it this way, meaning doing a base coat, doing the pastels, and doing just a few little color shifts at the end to blend it all together. I find that I'm doing less back and forth work to get where I want. I'm finding that I can get to where I want much faster as far as like a look. I used to spend hours with an airbrush and looking at all these colors and going in and trying to airbrush it, and like, you know what? I'm struggling. I'm fighting it too much. This to me right here looks really, really good. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to seal these, and then I will do the lips, and we'll go from there. I'll be right back. Okay, went and sealed these with the Krylon flat. So I don't know, I'm not sure, but my phone, whenever I take photos at least, or when I look at things on my phone, it adds a lot of red to stuff. So I think a lot of times when I send photos with my phone, things look more red. Like I'm looking at the back of my phone right now, and these look more red than they actually are in person. So it is what it is. So for the lips, I like to use oils. So I've got a little bit of mineral spirits here in a cup, just to the side. Right here, a little Dixie cup. And I got a plethora of colors here. And we're going to mix up a little color. So I'm going to get a little pink on here. So these are Abtelung 502 oils. Only oils I've used. I have some Winsor Newton oils, but like one tube of white can cost you like $30. So what I do is I just kind of get a bunch of colors out here. I'm going to mix up a rosy. I don't want it to look like he has lipstick on. So I'm going to get some of this. And it's interesting because like the color on the tube, this looks like really pink, but it's not. It's kind of like a magenta. And we're going to get some, whatever this is, light rust brown. Again, I don't care what the name of the color is. I just want, it's all about what color I can make with it. And we're going to get a little of this, what is this? I think this is called wash brown. You need very little of this. Do I have a burnt sienna? Shadow brown. What is this? I thought I had a burnt sienna. Dark mud. You can see I have a bunch of them. These are all my Abtelungs and true metals. I thought I had a... It may not be called burnt sienna because... Anyway. I don't... What I do when I get... They have a flesh set that I want to get because it's got a nice range of fleshy tones. I've been meaning to get that for a while. I just haven't. I mean, I got tubes in here I've never opened. Black I've never opened. Anyway, we're gonna see what we can make up with these. Do I have a little white? Let's see if we got any white. I think I got some white. Shadow, snow white. Okay. So these are all just straight. I just use cardboard. So even though these are oils, I don't have to wait a long time to form to dry because I'm going to put them on pretty light. So I'm going to take a little of this, and you get a little of the turpentine. Some of these oils are a little drier than others. I'm going to take a little bit of this color, whatever it is. A little bit of white. Actually a lot of white. I'm going to make up a lip color here. A little bit of this kind of color, a little bit of that red. And a little bit of the shadow brown. And you can see I've got a kind of a flesh tone going here. And we get some Q-tips. I go through a shitload of Q-tips. A little more of the mineral spirits. So I want to put this on thin because, again, I'm not painting, I'm going to be tinting the lips. So that's a pretty good tone right there. So this is a combination of all these colors in various amounts, and I just kind of mix them until I get the look I want. Maybe a little more red, maybe just a hair more white. And so you just bring it all together. Oops, too much white. Lip should be just a tad darker than the skin around it. Okay. So I got a brush here. Again, this is just a cheap brush from Hobby Lobby. Which, by the way, I put a big old post on my personal page that you should boycott Hobby Lobby because they're being dicks to anyone who's got any of their workers during this coronavirus crap. They're not paying them. I shouldn't complain because my work officially has put me on furlough now. So, okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to kind of, this may be a little too pink. Which is no big deal. We can take care of that. This is pretty thin. Yeah, right now it looks like he's got lipstick. No big deal. So we're going to come in here with a toothpick, just a dry toothpick, and we're going to kind of dab some of that off. I'm just going to build up some layers here. I'm going to go back on with just some of this brown. It's a little too pink. I just want to tint them. And now that we have this sealed with the Krylon flat, if I don't like what I do, I can just take some of the mineral spirits and wipe it off. And that right there looks pretty good. Just a little darker, nice fleshy tone. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to take this kind of back, I'm going to do the pink first. Repeat the same step. Now if you notice, you're looking at the skin tones now, I put on that flat coat, I put on a little bit. So I did that on purpose because I don't want the oils to soak into the paint as much. If I put on real flat, the oils will tend to soak into it and I won't be able to remove it the way I want. So we made them a little pink, and then we're gonna go back in with a little bit of this brown. And this brown is a little stronger, it's not quite as thin. It's a little more opaque. And then we're gonna dab it off again and it'll blend it in. Back to the brown a little bit, just a little pink. Just dab it. It's like this, and I'll blend it right in. Let's see, I think I like the other lips a little bit better. Yeah, I'm gonna go back in with the brown a little bit. I'm gonna clean my brush off. That brown tend to do the trick. There we go. So this is just, even though it's really stark right now, it's kind of, and this is pretty strong paint. We're gonna dab it off and tap it and it'll blend right in. All right, that looks really good. Go back on with the pink just a little bit, just on the edge here, because they almost got the same kind of look to it. tap and blend it in. This side looks really good. I'm trying to get that to match as closely as possible. It's also dried down a little bit too, so that makes a difference. I'm gonna get the top of the lip just a little bit more. I got some friends who use oils for all their skin tones and they look really good. I'm going to try that eventually. The great thing about the oils is that they stay, you can always reactivate them with the mineral spirits. So you let them dry for a day or so and you can go back and revisit them. But it was looking pretty good, I think. So typically the oils, you gotta let them dry for a few days. I did meet someone at a show in where were we? San Antonio a couple months ago, and he's a miniature painter, an amazing miniature painter. And I was asking him about, he works with oils a lot, and he's like, he actually bakes his oils. So at a very low, like 250 in the oven for about 20 minutes, and he can bake off the oils and keep working. So it's subtle, but it's there. Just a little tint to the lips. Trying to get these to match a little bit better, the other ones. Get the corners of the mouth a little bit. I'll probably go back in here with the shadow brown in just a second to hit the, really to hit the crooks and the corners. Oops, I got a little too much. And you see it comes right off if I mess up. That's the beauty about these. Okay, I'm gonna come up with the shadow brown a little bit. Hit that crease right there and right there, and that makes a world of a difference, just that little bit. Do the same thing on this side. I'm not, oops, I got a little too much. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on the brush, I'm just kind of let the bristles fall into that crook and get into the shadow. Okay, so I got a little too much there, so I'm going to get some of the mineral spirits on my brush and blend it in a little bit. There we go. And if I get a little bit on the rest of the lips, it's okay. It's just going to blend it in the shadows. There you go. I think those look pretty good. Subtle, but there. A little pink to them. They don't look like lipstick. Got a little extra oil up here, so I'm going to take a little mineral spirits on my brush and just wipe it off. You can take a slightly damp brush like this and work the edge to soften it. Just like that. I think those look good. I'm going to let those dry just for a few minutes. I'll hit it with the hair dryer. This one's already dry. As you can see, it's dried down. It's not shiny anymore. That's good to go. I worked this side a little bit longer, so we're gonna let that dry a little bit. Actually, maybe add a little highlights here. Let's see what that looks like. If I don't like it, I can always take it off. Add a little white to this pink, and add just a little highlight right here. Kind of blend it in a little bit. Let's see what that looks like. Just on this part right here. I'm not sure I like that. It gets it too close to the other skin tone. Let's dab it in with the cotton swab and see what it does. I think that looks good. See, I can just keep working it until I get the look I want. Just leave that alone, let that dry. Bring some of this shadow brown into that color I was using before. Down here. Sorry, my little palette's off camera here. So you can see I've got all, these are all the shades I'm working with right in here. So I got like a shadow, mid-tone, highlight. And if you put your oils on a cardboard like this, it'll help draw out the linseed in it. So I've got my brush now chiseled to a flat tip now. I'm going to try to work this shadow just a little bit more. There we go. Sometimes you just got to learn to stop messing with it. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good. Hopefully that shows up in camera. My work lights are very harsh. I got 4 spotlights, so the lighting's very contrasty, very harsh. So, but it's easy to work under because it really shows me everything. All right, so we're gonna let those dry for a minute. I'm gonna seal these again, and then I think I'll go in and start working on the hair. But I'm really happy with the skin tones, happy with the lips. So next really is the hair and eyes. And I've got some instructions from Leo on the hair. I have to look up to see what color his hair's supposed to be. I want to say it's supposed to be like a dirty blonde, but I think that's wrong. It's supposed to be kind of brown. So I need to look. A lot of times I have to look up what color are this character's eyes. Actually, this came with decals, so which is nice. Because I always say I cheat with eyes. I use decals. I will say that on one of the license pieces I'm working on, I use decals as a stencil, and then I painted over on top of them to get their correct color because I didn't have their correct color. So we'll come back when I'm ready to do hair. Alrighty, we went and sealed those with the Krylon flat again. Again, I put it on a little wet, not too wet, so I got a nice kind of. This is like the sheen I like for skin tone. I see a lot of skin tone that's really shiny. I mean, if I look at my arms, I'm not shiny. Personally, I think people, I don't like the finish. They almost look like they're sweating, and like it doesn't look right to me. So this is kind of like the sheen I like. It's like a matte. It's not semi-gloss. It's like one step up from flat. It's got just a little bit of sheen to it. So for the base coat, so I found the hair is supposed to be kind of brown. I'm gonna start off with golden Artist Tube Acrylics Burnt Umber as the base. So I got some here in my palette. Yeah, just a touch of water to it, just to help it flow a little bit better. I'm not going to do this whole process on camera because base coating hair takes me a long time, and usually it takes 2 coats with this golden, especially if I add water to it. It just thins it out. So the part that takes the longest is going around the hairline, and this will dry to a darker tone. So this will be the base, and we'll start adding highlights from here, and then in the then we'll add a little bit of gray on the temples, not much. Kind of like a Kingdom Come Superman. All right, I got too much paint on there. So we're gonna go in here and start base coating. I may have to get a smaller brush. I'd always go around the hairline first because I put my finger on top of the head to stabilize my hand. And if you do the top first, then you get paint on your hand and on everything else. So this takes me a while. Let me get a different brush. The bristles on these are a little too soft. I like to have a little stiffer brush when I'm edging hair and have a little more control over it. And again, I always have Q-tips by and a little bit of water in case I get some paint where I don't want it. A little bit of water, some Q-tips. And we can wipe it off quickly. So just so you get the idea, I'm just going to base coat this and then we'll come back. Okay, so we got the hair base coated, 2 coats. I'm going to let this dry a little bit longer and put one more coat on just because I see some thin spots. Actually, this one's had 2 coats. The other one has not had 2 coats. Did the eyebrows too. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you how to clean up some areas if I get a little paint where I don't want. I get a toothpick. Toothpicks are like one of my favorite tools. And around the hairline in particular, actually I just saw a little spot that I missed. Where'd it go? I just saw it right there. I wait till the paint is pretty dry. Your initial thought is to go in while it's wet, but don't let this dry, especially if you've sealed it really well. Let it dry and get yourself a toothpick, and you can just go in, like there's a little excess right here. Let's go in and scrape it off. It comes right off. And if you've sealed it well, you won't hurt the paint below. Let's see where else. I think this one's actually pretty good. I don't remember seeing any little hair here in the, take that out. Let's see, anything on the eyebrows? Actually, I think this one's pretty good. I'm not seeing any overpaint. Let's see. This one I had some. And I'll even put a little, stick it in my mouth and get a little damp. I just go around, and if I see anything extra, I just try to get it off. Like that. And you go back and kind of work on this hairline here a little bit. I get a little bit right in here. I'm not sure if you see it. just going to dampen it just a little bit. And then scrape it off just like that. It cleans it up. Pretty simple. So I go around, check the edge, and get it as clean as I can. Make sure it makes sense. So that's what I do. Use a toothpick after the paint's dried pretty good. You can let it dry all the way actually and be fine. And just clean up the edges if you need to. As I said, this head's only got one coat of paint. The edges have 2 coats and the rest of the head's got 1 coat. So I'm gonna let this dry, see what it looks like. I'll probably add another coat overall. And then we'll seal it, and then we'll start adding highlights. So this part takes a little while because I love these golden paints, but they don't cover as well like as a Vallejo. But this tube of paint is on sale like $7 or $8, and a little tube of Vallejo is like $3, $3 or $4. So it's more cost effective to get the big tubes of acrylic paints, and they're actually very high quality. Once they're dry and everything, they're really good. I like them. I'm trying to remember who turned me on to the golden acrylic. And you get the there's a heavy base. There's also a heavy base. These guys right here, heavy body acrylic. Liquitex heavy body acrylics are also very good. I use these a lot too. They got more pigment. So yeah. So with the hair base coat and stuff is starting to come together really nice. So until you get the hair in and kind of get those base coated, it really doesn't look like a whole lot. What's interesting about this one is that this younger, there's a younger and a slightly older sculpt. This looks like, what's the guy? Return to Superman actor, Cavilli, I can't remember his name. He looks just like him to me. I mean, so I'm not sure that was the intent, but he looks like Superman, Return to Superman kind of to me. But yeah, these are looking really sharp. Super happy with the skin tones. The just base coating the hair brings it together, looking really nice. Super happy with these. So once I get the hair completely base coated and everything, we'll come back and we'll do highlights. Okay, so that base coating took a little while. So basically about 2.5, 3 coats to get these covered the way I want. Seal them with the Krylon flat again. As you can see, I'm kind of maintaining that kind of slight sheen to everything. Not too shiny, not too flat. Now we're going to start adding some highlights to this, and it's going to be, we're going to start with the burnt umber, and we're just going to add a little bit of burnt sienna to this. Get a little redness to it, not a whole lot. And we're going to dry brush. So I need to use a fairly stiff brush. I think I actually cut the bristles off of this one to get it stiffer. Get a paper towel, or I can just use my towel here because it's all shitty as it is. I'm gonna mix up these 2 colors here. Right here in my palette. So I add a little burnt sienna to that. So the first base coat is basically the shadow color. Then we're gonna go from there. And it's usually 2 or 3, sometimes 4 levels of highlighting I do. So you don't know what dry brushing is you load your brush up and then you get most of it off. Like that. In this first step, you probably won't see a whole lot of change, and you're just gonna skirt across the top of everything and go back and forth. Like I said, this first step, you probably won't see a whole lot of change in the camera. I can see a little bit here. It's just kind of shifting the color a little bit. And we hit the top parts harder because that's where the light's going to hit it. And then when I come down the sideburns, I just use the tips of the brush. And you want to use very little paint on your brush. You want to build it up slowly. Put too much on, then you're just covering up your base coat all the way, and then I guess go back and re-base coat. And notice when you feel those spots where I miss some base coat, I'll have to go back there and touch it up. and some of the crevices, which is no big deal. I'm not sure if you're seeing that. It's showing up a little bit, I think. So like I said, I usually do, I'm trying to think, usually 3 steps in this. This will have a few more steps because I'm going to add a little gray to the temples. Give them a little bit of age. See a little white spot there in the little crevice right there. I missed the base coat. Let's go touch that up. I don't have to do it right now because it's in the shadow, so they wouldn't get hit by this anyway. All right, so that looks pretty good. What I'm not going to do is add white to this. That'll start adding gray to the whole piece. So I'm going to stick with the warm tones. So here on the right, we got a little highlighting. You can see it on the left, we do not have any. So you can see a slight difference. That's the first highlight. And I even use this, I'll get in, well I was going to use a big brush on the eyebrows, but it's too big. So for the eyebrows, we're going to do the same steps. It's got a little chiseled brush here. And I'm just going to use the flat part of the brush. Brush may be too big. And we're going to just hit the tops. And typically on eyebrows you don't see this too much because they're very small. Actually that brush is too big. I need a little smaller flat brush. So this color that I have here, I'll add probably a little bit of yellow to it. So I'm just going to come in here and hit the tops of the eyebrows a little bit. Just using the flat part of the brush. Got a little spot there on accident. Just always keep damp Q-tips nearby when I'm doing this. Okay, just like that. All right, I'm gonna do the other head and then seal them and come back. Alrighty, so I sealed those, hit it with a hairdryer, and now what I've done is I added just a little bit of this game color heavy brown to my previous mixture, and I've got this kind of looks like baby poop, unfortunately, but it's a good next step for highlights. So I'm just gonna use my short bristle brush, and you'll definitely see a difference here as far as highlights go. Gonna come in, again, just use the flat part of the brush. And hopefully you can see that. It's coming out very nicely. This is the unhelmeted portrait, obviously. So I think what I'll do is on this next one I won't seal these. I'll just go ahead and do the last little highlight right on top of this because it's really just going to be hitting the tips of the very high spots of stuff. pushing down a little bit more, because this will help. By pushing a little more, help blend it all in a little bit, so it's not so stark. That's looking really nice. Really good brown tone for hair. We got a little too much there. So right there, that's pretty much the hair color. And then I'll go add one more highlight to these tips and the very tops. And we'll get my little short brush out. We'll hit the eyebrows. That. I went and touched up those two little spots with more the base color. So let's go ahead and do this other head while we got it here, and then we'll do one more highlight and then seal it. And I'm going to send Leo a message about the gray. I think they both get gray. Both portraits get gray. Shit, I got a little aggressive there. I hit the forehead. This head you don't see any, because he has a helmet on, so you don't see the top part. You actually don't see a whole lot of the hair, but we're going to do it anyway. So when I get closer to the hairline, I come across this way, so I don't try to avoid hitting the skin. So, oops, I hit the ear. So a little touch up there on the skin I gotta do. Sometimes I'll miss a spot, like if I get some of the hair color on the skin, I'll miss it and I'll seal it before I catch it. There's a little spot on the ear there. I need to brush touch up a little skin tone on the back side of the ear. Luckily you don't see it too much. So I got this little pointy hobby Q-tip. So keep getting this paint right along the hairline, which I don't want. So a way to kind of get in there and pinpoint taking it off. Like I said, this one you don't see hardly any of the hair, so I'll cover it up. Okay, let's hit the eyebrows. And then we're going to keep the same color going, and we're going to add the last little bit of highlighting to it. Just picking some more paint up off my paper towel over here. The eyebrows are really hard to see any highlighting until you get to the very last highlight, because there's very little surface area to see the different gradations. This one's helping a little bit. Okay. So I'm gonna rinse this brush off. Now to this color, I'm going to add, this color's filthy brown. It's got a little more yellow in it. I don't want a lot, like that. And we're just gonna go right over, I'm not gonna seal these, I'm just gonna go right over it. So this is almost like a dirty blonde color. I don't need a lot of it. If I go too far with this, then he'll turn into a dirty blonde, and I don't want dirty blonde, I want brown. Again, so I'm just going to use a flat part of the brush, coming in like this, just hitting the real high spots. You can see it's just hitting the tops of the hairs. Doesn't take a lot. And this will dry down just a little bit darker. When I first put it on, it looks a little yellow to me. But as it dries, it'll come down. Hit these tips a little bit more, and the top right here. That's looking pretty good. Same thing with this, just use the flat part of the brush, just so we hit the top. Again, most of this gets covered up with the helmet, so we don't see it. Sometimes what will happen if I go too bright with the final highlight color, I'll go back in with a very, very, very dry brush of the mid-tone or base color and very lightly blend it back in. Sometimes I'll get the color slightly off, or I'll go a little too bright with the highlight. So I'll go back in with a very, 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 very dry brush and just hit it with that base or with the mid-tone or shadow color, and it'll help blend it back in. Okay, now let's hit the eyebrows. Those I'm just going to kind of hit. Like that. So looking pretty good. So I'm going to seal these, and then go make sure I didn't clean up any edges, make sure I didn't get paint anywhere, and then we're going to work on adding the gray to the temples, and then the hair should be done, and then we can do the eyes. I'm going to not record the eyes. This video is going to be really long as it is. It's going to be like over an hour, at least an hour. I'm not sure how many people watch my videos for that long, if anyone watches them that long. but I like to show things in real time if I can. All right, so we're gonna seal those and we'll come back. All right, so that got sealed, and so the one with the head with the helmet doesn't get the gray treatment on the sides because it's a younger face. Let's put the helmet on real quick and see what it looks like. 1 second. Looks pretty good. So yeah, so that's what you see of the, and it goes down a little bit more. I don't want to push it down all the way because I just sealed this hair, so I don't want to mess it up. But that's how the helmet goes on. Looking sharp. All right, so let's put this aside for now. Don't want to mess up that helmet. The helmets were several steps to get the way I want. Okay, so I just noticed that I got missed a little spot on the shadow side. We're gonna hit it real quick. See, constantly seeing things that I missed, touching them up as I go. Okay. So we're just gonna do a little bit of gray highlighting. We're not gonna give him like a white hair, super gray. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take this color I got going on right here. It's kind of a mess. I'm gonna add a little where's it? Neutral gray to it. I may have to add a little water to this to activate it. And just a drop. I'm actually gonna take some of my water that I've been cleaning the brushes off in. I'm actually add a little white to this. And I'm going to do this with a small brush. Maybe this little chisel brush will be good. I'm going to go in. I'm going to hit the sideburns a little bit. I'm just going to add a little gray to this to start off with. So it's going to cover up some of the work we've done, but it's okay. We're going to come back and add some more to it. Just a little bit. I'm going to have it come down and kind of because I still want it to have a brown undertone. I don't want it to have a gray undertone. So I'm going with the direction of the hair because this is getting down in the shadow a little bit. Still maintaining the work I did before, it's just subtle. But we're just kind of giving it a kind of a brownish grayish base. Just like that. Then we add a little white. That's actually a lot of white, a little too much maybe. I'm going to build up our highlights. So we're still stay in the brown family, but we're just adding some white and gray to it. We're going to add a little more white to that. We're just going to keep working our way up. Probably go up one more step from this. And I may go back and blend in with one of my previous colors. Okay. Just looking at it straight on, make sure I'm kind of even here. All right, we're gonna go up one more level of white. I just keep adding to my previous color. Because you gotta remember this dries down a little bit. Just using a very flat part of the brush. So we still maintain the hair color. I'm just giving it a little bit of age. I think that looks pretty good. What we didn't want to do is paint it gray. We didn't want to paint the sides of the hair gray and then go in with highlighters. We want to keep the hair color. Oops. Got somewhere I didn't want it. Just take a damp Q-tip and clean it off. Where'd my little hobby one go? Little pointy Q-tip. Go there and clean it off a little bit. Okay, now we're gonna go with my little brush. I can't get where I want to with it. With the big brush. Ah, that was stupid. Okay, I gotta go back and blend that in. I had too much paint on my brush. Trying to get right there around the ear a little bit. Go this direction just a little bit. Go with the hairs just a little bit. Get just a tiny bit of white on there. This will help blend it in. That's looking pretty good. I'm gonna hit the eyebrows just a hair. I think that looks pretty good. Let's see, I think I might go back just real quick. I'm gonna mix up a little bit of this burnt umber and we're gonna burnt sienna again. Kind of my mid-tone, a little bit on the darker side. Just got a little bit on the brush, and I'm going to come back and blend this in a little bit, soften it up, soften the transition. So I'm just going, blending it in from the shadow to the highlight. So it's a little softer transition. That looks good. That's looking good. Still maintain those highlights. Right, I think that looks pretty good. Let's see what else. I don't know. I have to seal this and send it to Leo, see what he says. But I'm gonna seal it and then we'll work on the eyes. And I probably won't record that. It's just putting the decals in. Maybe when I get around doing the water lines and stuff like that, but it looks pretty good to me. So I guess I'll call this work in progress done because it's gonna be a long one anyway, a couple hours. Skin tones and hair. But there you go, looking good. Thanks for watching, bye. Okay, I know I said that this video is going to be done, but I just finished these up, and these look really freaking amazing, I think. I did the eye decals. He's super squinty on both portraits, especially the older portrait. I just got done glossing the eyes, so they may be a little milky. For the gloss, I just use like just happens to be MIG. I use any acrylic like this gloss coat. I use that because it dries fairly quickly, and I can layer on if I want to add glossier. I was using like a 2K clear for a little while, but if I mess up on that and I get it where I don't want, I can't get it off. It eats through the paint. This I can clean it up with water. But these look these are probably some of my best skin tones ever right here. Super happy with them. Love the lips. For the eyes, I go in. Let me explain what I do for the eyes as far as how I do eyes. I always tell people I cheat, I use decals. So I base coat with like an off-white or a really light gray. Put the decal on. I use the setting solution. Once the decal's on, it's dried, I put a setting solution on. I personally use Microsol. It's a mild setter. Once that's dried, then I seal it real quick again with some flat spray. And then I go in and with a very small brush, I mix up some different skin tones. I use some dark skin tones and some pinks and stuff. It's a little hard to see on this guy, but I go in with the darker skin tone between the bottom eyelid and the eyeball. And I go in with a darker skin tone on the top eyelid, between the eyelid and the eyeball. And once that's done, I go in with a pink and I do a waterline. And I do the tear duct and stuff like that. So these look really, really good. I'm super happy with these. I hope Leo likes them because I think they look amazing. So as far as I know, as far as I'm concerned, the statue's done. So I'll do a review video of it here in a little bit. But I'll let these dry for about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, and we'll put it all together and see what it looks like. But super happy with that. I think it looks amazing. As always, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.